The sky was overcast, and the wind was cruel that evening. It wasn't just cold, it was the kind of chill that bit through the skin and rattled the bones. People wrapped in thick shawls and jackets rushed down the street, their breaths forming pale clouds as they walked quickly past the line of shops. The city was alive, but not for everyone. In a corner near a busy intersection, almost invisible against the backdrop of the moving crowd, stood a thin, shivering boy, no more than 10 years old. His bare feet were cracked and purple from the cold, standing on the icy pavement like they had no right to complain. He wore an oversized, torn sweater, the sleeves hanging past his fingers. He carried a small, dirty wooden box, his only possession, his shoe polish kit. His eyes were hollow, sunken with hunger and fatigue, yet there was still a faint glow in them, perhaps hope, or maybe just the last light of a fading childhood. He looked around, scanning people's shoes, trying to find someone, anyone, who might stop and let him work. But no one did. The crowd rushed by like he was invisible. Some gave him disgusted looks. Others avoided eye contact. A few even stepped around him as if his mere presence was inconvenient. He shifted his focus to the warm glow of a bakery across the street. Behind the foggy glass, fresh naan and sweet buns were being taken out of the oven. The smell wafted into the street, a mix of cardamom, sugar, and warmth. His stomach growled, loud and painful. He hadn't eaten anything since yesterday morning. All he had earned was enough for half a cup of chai, and even that he had shared with another street boy. The boy inched closer to the bakery, standing right outside the glass window. His nose nearly touched the cold glass as he stared at a golden pastry being packed for a customer inside. His mouth watered, and he imagined what that first bite would feel like, soft, sweet, warm. For a moment, he forgot the cold. For a moment, he dreamed. But dreams don't last long when reality is cruel. Chow Bog Yahan Si, came a harsh voice. The bakery's guard, a tall man in uniform, stormed out and shoved the boy aside. Lagan ka mood karab kar raha hai, bikari kahin ka. The boy stumbled backward, his polished kit falling to the ground with a loud clatter. The few people who had noticed now shook their heads and kept walking. Some laughed. One woman muttered, Kahan Kahan Seaa Jate Hain Ya Log. The boy quickly bent down, picked up his box, and walked away slowly, swallowing his pain and humiliation like he had done so many times before. His hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. He sat down at the edge of a footpath, his back against a cold wall, knees pulled to his chest. He tried not to cry. But a single tear escaped, tracing a silent path down his cheek. He looked up at the evening sky, gray, unforgiving, indifferent. And yet, somewhere in that heavy sky, he searched for a sign. Anything to tell him that tomorrow might be better. That life could still be kind. That someone, somewhere, might finally see him, not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a child who just wanted to live. Little did he know, that moment was coming soon. And it would change everything. The cold had deepened as dusk settled over the city. Streetlights flickered to life one by one, casting dim halos on the wet pavement. Most people were heading home, wrapped in layers of warmth and thoughts of hot dinners. But one man stood still. Across the road, leaning against a lamppost just a few steps from the bakery, stood an old man. His clothes were simple, a faded wool sweater, loose trousers, and a knitted cap pulled over his ears. He held a worn walking stick, though his posture was still strong. His face bore the map of time, lines etched by years of labor, quiet pain, and long-forgotten smiles. But his eyes were kind. He had been standing there for several minutes, watching the little boy with the shoe polish kit. He saw the way the child pressed his nose against the bakery glass, how his tiny fingers curled tightly around his wooden box, and how his shoulders slumped every time someone pushed him away. The old man's heart grew heavy. He had known hunger once. He had known rejection. And as he watched this barefoot child, so small, so invisible to the world, it was like looking at a younger version of himself, one the world had forgotten. He stepped forward, slowly, and crossed the road. The boy didn't notice him at first. He was sitting against a wall, legs pulled to his chest, eyes distant. But then he heard a gentle voice, soft but firm. "Beta, buk lagi hai." The boy looked up, startled. No one ever asked him that. People usually shouted at him. Or worse, pretended he didn't exist. But this man's voice had something in it, a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. He nodded hesitantly. The old man gave him a soft smile and gestured toward the bakery. "Chelo mir soth." The boy stood slowly, unsure if this was real or another cruel trick. But something in the old man's eyes gave him courage. He followed. They entered the bakery. The warm air inside hit the boy like a gentle embrace. His body relaxed slightly, still cautious but now curious. The old man went to the counter and ordered a hot bun, freshly baked and soft, and a steaming cup of tea. As they waited, the boy stood silently, afraid to speak, afraid to believe this was actually happening. When the food came, the old man gently guided him to a corner bench near a small wall heater. It wasn't much, but for the boy, it was the warmest place he had sat in weeks. His fingers defrosted slowly as he wrapped his tiny hands around the hot cup. He took a bite of the bun, and his eyes welled up instantly. Not because of the food, but because of the kindness. No one had fed him in months. He had fought dogs over leftovers in trash cans. He had drunk rainwater collected in broken bottles. But now, someone had given him a meal without asking anything in return. The old man watched him silently, with a look of quiet compassion. "Nam kia hai, beta?" he asked softly. "Ali," the boy whispered. The old man smiled. "Main Nasir. Dost Banoj." Ali nodded. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips for the first time in days. He didn't know who this man was. But in that moment, he felt seen. He felt human. And most importantly, he felt hope. Little did he know, that single act of kindness, a hot bun, a cup of tea, and a warm corner, would begin a new chapter in his life. The storm outside raged on. But inside that little bakery, under the faint glow of yellow lights, a boy's frozen heart had begun to thaw. The warmth of the tea still lingered in Ali's hands as he sat on the wooden bench inside the cozy bakery. The noise of the city outside had faded, replaced by the low hum of the heater beside him and the soft clinking of cups and plates. For the first time in what felt like forever, his body wasn't trembling, and for once, his stomach wasn't empty. But more than food, he had received something else that evening, gentleness. The old man, Nasir Sahib, sat beside him quietly. He watched the boy chew slowly, savoring every bite of the sweet bun. His eyes occasionally drifted to the boy's bare feet, to his ragged clothes, and then back to his face, a face that had seen too much sadness for someone so small. After a few quiet minutes, Nasir reached into his old satchel. His fingers moved with care as he pulled out something wrapped in brown paper. It wasn't fancy. In fact, it looked quite ordinary, the kind of item someone might overlook in a busy market. He placed it gently on the table in front of Ali. The boy looked at it, puzzled. "Kal Kudeko," Nasir said softly. Ali unwrapped it slowly, his small fingers fumbling with the paper. Inside was a small, lined notebook, the kind with a faded blue cover, and a sharpened pencil, tied with a thin red thread. He stared at it in silence. It wasn't food. It wasn't money. It wasn't a blanket. But something about this simple gift made his throat tighten. Nasir leaned in and spoke, his voice low but full of conviction. "Pad lik lo beta, zindagi badal jayegi." Get an education, my son, it will change your life. Ali looked up at him, confused. School? Writing? No one had ever mentioned such things to him. His world was made of dusty shoes, harsh voices, and hunger. He had never held a pencil before, not like this. He turned the notebook over in his hands as if it were made of glass. His eyes scanned the blank pages, each one whispering a future he couldn't quite imagine yet. Lekin, muyi likna nahi ada, he murmured, barely audible. Nasir smiled and placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Seek jayega, insan sab kuch seek sakta hai agar irada ho. You'll learn, anyone can, if they have the will. Ali's eyes filled with tears again, but these weren't from hunger or pain. These were different. These were the tears of being believed in, of being told, maybe for the first time in his life, that he was worth something. Without a word, he reached out and wrapped his arms around the old man. It was sudden, almost clumsy, but heartfelt. He held him tightly, as if afraid that this moment would vanish like a dream. Nasir didn't flinch. He patted the boy's back softly, letting the embrace linger. He knew this hug wasn't just gratitude, it was the kind of hug that said, "I've never had anyone like you. I needed this more than food. And perhaps, please don't disappear like everyone else." After a while, they pulled apart. Nasir's eyes were moist, too, though he blinked it away like old men do. He adjusted the boy's sweater and pointed to the notebook again. Kalesi main tuhi miln iya karunga, thoda thoda sekenj. From tomorrow, I'll come see you here, we'll learn, little by little. Ali nodded, holding the notebook close to his chest, like a treasure. And in many ways, it was. Because in that moment, a seed had been planted, not in the soil, but in the heart of a forgotten child. A seed called hope. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Rows of proud parents, friends, and faculty filled the seats, their eyes fixed on the stage adorned with marigolds and draped with a deep blue banner that read, "Annual Graduation Ceremony, Class of the Year." Among the graduates was a young man named Ali, now in his early 20s. He stood tall in his black graduation gown, his shoulders squared, his heart full. The golden sash across his chest gleamed under the lights, but what truly stood out was the depth in his eyes, eyes that had once been hollow with hunger, now shining with purpose. As the principal announced his name, the crowd clapped politely. He walked up to the podium, holding a small sheet of paper, though his hands didn't tremble. He had practiced this speech many times, but today, he didn't want to just recite words. He wanted to share a truth, one that had changed his life forever. He adjusted the mic and looked at the audience. For a brief moment, his eyes scanned the crowd, as if searching for someone. And then, he began. "Most of you don't know me beyond the campus walls," he said, voice clear, calm. "But before I talk about degrees and dreams, I want to tell you a story, a true one." The hall fell silent. Years ago, I was a boy with no shoes. No school. No home. I used to stand outside a bakery with a shoe polish kit, hoping someone would let me earn a few rupees. Most people ignored me. Some pushed me away. But one evening, everything changed. He paused. His voice tightened slightly. An old man noticed me. Noticed, not in pity, not with anger, but with kindness. He gave me food. A place to sit. And before he left, he handed me a small notebook and a pencil. Just that. A notebook. The audience listened intently. I didn't even know how to hold the pencil right. But I still remember what he said that day, "Pad leek lo beta, zindagi badal jayegi." Get an education, my son, it will change your life. Ali smiled gently, his voice warm. He visited me often. Taught me letters. Helped me read signs, write my name. Eventually, he convinced a nearby school to take me in. I worked during the day, studied at night. It wasn't easy. But his belief in me never faded. And slowly, I started believing too. The crowd was motionless. A few people had tears in their eyes. "That man is no longer with us today," Ollie said, voice cracking slightly. "But everything I am, is because he saw a boy no one else did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, faded item, a blue-covered notebook, its pages worn, its edges curled. "This is the same notebook," he said, holding it up. "It didn't just teach me letters. It taught me that kindness is powerful. That a small act, done with a big heart, can change someone's entire life." Thunderous applause erupted. Not just for the speech, but for the journey behind it. Ollie looked up once more, as if speaking to the sky. "Nasir uncle, if you're watching, this one's for you." And with that, he stepped back from the podium, not just as a graduate, but as a living example that hope, when planted with love, grows stronger than any hardship. The city had changed in many ways over the years, new buildings, new traffic signals, newer faces. But some streets remained the same. And one chilly evening, Ollie walked along one of those old roads, the one that had once been his entire world. He was no longer the barefoot boy from years ago. Now in his late 20s, Ollie wore a simple but neat shirt, clean shoes, and carried a leather satchel over his shoulder. He was a teacher now. Someone children listened to, respected. Someone who had broken through the darkness that once surrounded him. But he hadn't forgotten. Every time he passed the old bakery, something inside him paused. That small corner of the street was more than just a memory, it was where his life had changed. As he walked past it again that evening, his eyes caught sight of a familiar scene. There, near the same bakery window, sat a small boy, curled up with his arms around his knees. His clothes were tattered, his face was smudged with dust, and his eyes held the same emptiness that Ollie once knew all too well. The boy looked up at passers-by with quiet desperation, his tiny hand stretched out, not for pity, but for survival. Most ignored him. Some waved him off. Others just walked faster, pretending not to see. Ollie stood still, heart sinking. He knew that pain. He walked over slowly and knelt beside the child. "Book logi hai?" he asked gently. The boy looked up, startled. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he gave a tiny nod, his lips trembling from cold and fear. Ollie smiled warmly, extending his hand. "Chelo mir soth." They walked into the bakery, just as Ollie had, years ago, with the same welcoming aroma of fresh naan, buns, and warm tea filling the air. The heater was still near the corner table. Even the man behind the counter was familiar, though a little older now. Ollie ordered a hot bun and tea and guided the boy to the same spot where his own story had begun. The child looked around cautiously, unsure of why this was happening or whether it would all disappear in a moment. But as he took the first bite of the warm bun, a softness returned to his face. He ate slowly, silently, his small fingers curled around the cup of tea as if holding something sacred. Ollie watched quietly, his eyes moist with memory. When the boy had finished eating, Ollie reached into his satchel and pulled out a neatly wrapped item. He handed it to the boy. The child looked at it curiously and began to unwrap it. Inside was a new notebook, its cover bright, its pages blank and full of possibility. Alongside it, a sharpened pencil tied with a blue thread. Ollie smiled and spoke the words he had waited years to pass on. Pad leek lo beta, zindagi badal jayegi. The boy stared at him, confused, but something in Ollie's voice made him nod. Maybe he didn't understand fully. But his heart recognized the sincerity. Ollie reached out, gently placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Main kal fur ayon gatuhi likna sikain kuliya. I'll come again tomorrow, to teach you how to write. The boy's eyes widened, someone had promised to return. And this time, maybe, someone really would. As Ollie stepped out into the evening air, he glanced back once more. A new story was about to begin. And somewhere up in the sky, perhaps an old soul smiled. Because the kindness he once gave had not died, it had simply come full circle.